This is the Alaska Triangle, a 500,000 square mile corridor of wilderness stretching between Anchorage, Juneau, and Utqiagvik on Alaska's northern coast, and it swallows people at a rate that dwarfs any other region in the United States. Over 20,000 people have vanished inside this triangle since the early 1970s. That's an average of 6 people per day, every single day, for over 50 years, and most of them are never found. Everyone has heard of the Bermuda Triangle. It gets the movies, the documentaries, the t-shirts. But the Alaska Triangle actually produces more disappearances, and it does so with a consistency that no rational explanation has been able to fully account for. Alaska logs 163.76 missing persons per 100,000 residents. The national average is 6.5. The next closest state is Arizona, at 16 per 100,000. Alaska isn't just leading the pack, it's running a completely different race. And buried within this story are things that rarely make it into mainstream conversation. A sitting House Majority Leader who publicly questioned the official JFK narrative, gone without a trace. Shape-shifting creatures from indigenous folklore that predate European contact by centuries. A mysterious pyramid-shaped anomaly detected 700 feet underground near the Alaskan interior. A UFO encounter confirmed by both the FAA and Air Force radar, and melting glaciers now spitting out the wreckage of aircraft that disappeared decades ago, which has become a literal race against time. Let's start with the event that put this region on the map. October 16, 1972. A small private aircraft departed Anchorage bound for Juneau, carrying 4 men. 2 of those men ranked among the most powerful politicians in the United States. Thomas Hale Boggs Sr. was the sitting House Majority Leader, third in line for the presidency. Beside him sat Nick Begich, Alaska's lone congressman. They were joined by Begich's aide Russell Brown and their pilot, Don Johns, an experienced bush pilot who knew Alaskan skies as well as anyone alive. The plane never arrived. What followed was one of the largest search and rescue operations in American history. For more than a month, 50 civilian aircraft and 40 military planes scoured a search grid covering 32,000 square miles. They found nothing. Not a piece of debris, not a scrap of metal, not a single trace of 4 human beings or the aircraft that carried them. The NTSB never formally closed the investigation. The plane had simply ceased to exist somewhere between 2 of Alaska's largest cities. Now, here's where this story takes an interesting turn. Hale Boggs wasn't just any congressman. He served on the Warren Commission, the official body established to investigate the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and he had reportedly disagreed with many of its findings. He was vocal about it. Conspiracy theorists have had a field day with that detail for decades, and honestly, it's hard to blame them. When a sitting House Majority Leader who publicly questioned the official JFK narrative vanishes without a trace in the Alaskan wilderness, people are going to ask questions. But Boggs and Begich weren't the first to vanish in this corridor, and they certainly weren't the last. Rewind 22 years to January 26, 1950. A Douglas C-54 Skymaster, a military transport aircraft, departed Alaska bound for Montana carrying 44 people. 2 hours into its 8-hour flight, the crew made their last radio contact. Everything was routine. And then, silence. The search effort that followed was enormous. A joint operation between Canadian and American military forces covering vast stretches of wilderness and mountains. The NTSB predecessor agencies were involved in the investigation, and they found absolutely nothing. 44 servicemen, gone. As of 2026, no trace of that aircraft has ever been recovered. It remains one of the largest groups of American military personnel to simply vanish. And it keeps happening inside the Alaska Triangle. In 2013, an expert pilot named Alan Foster, a man with nearly 10,000 flight hours, disappeared from radar shortly after takeoff. He gave no indication of distress. The only anomaly was that he dropped to an altitude of 1,100 feet before losing contact. Neither he nor his aircraft were ever found. 10,000 hours of experience, and the triangle didn't care. Then there's Richard Griffiths, an inventor who traveled to Alaska hoping to prove the worth of his special wilderness survival cocoon. After months of people assuming he was simply testing his invention in the backcountry, he was reported missing. A man who brought a purpose-built survival device into the wilderness and still disappeared. Researchers who study these patterns, including wilderness disappearance investigators like David Paulides, whose missing 411 research catalogs unexplained vanishings across North American wilderness, have noted that the Alaska Triangle represents a disproportionate concentration of cases that resist conventional explanation. The sheer density of unsolved disappearances here sets it apart even from other remote regions. So, what's actually happening out here? The skeptics have a solid case, and it deserves a fair hearing. Alaska covers 665,000 square miles, making it larger than 1/5 of the entire contiguous United States combined. There are more caribou than people. Only 1/20th of 1% of the state is inhabited. The rest is pure, untouched wilderness, featuring ragged mountain ranges, active glaciers, millions of lakes, countless crevasses, and temperatures that plunge below -40 degrees. Denali, the highest peak in North America at 20,310 feet, sits within this same geographic corridor, a landmark so dominant it creates its own weather systems capable of swallowing aircraft whole. Alaska's glaciers are riddled with giant holes, hidden caves, and building-sized crevasses that can swallow an aircraft whole. Once something goes down in the backcountry and gets buried by even a single snowfall, finding it becomes nearly impossible. The landscape isn't just remote, it's actively hostile and constantly reshaping itself. There's also a documented phenomenon called magnetic declination in the region. Compasses inside the Alaska Triangle can be thrown off by as much as 30 degrees, a deviation large enough to send a hiker or an aircraft miles off course. This magnetic irregularity is thought to be caused by mineral deposits deep underground and activity in the aurora borealis. Both the Alaska Triangle and the Bermuda Triangle share this characteristic, and that's a detail worth sitting with for a moment. But the natural explanations, as compelling as they are, don't account for everything. Cryptozoologist and field researcher Ken Gerhard spent extensive time investigating disappearances inside the triangle for a television documentary. What he found troubled him. In his own words, a number of these missing person cases legitimately could not be solved. This wasn't just a case of someone being mauled by a bear or falling into a crevasse. These were often people that were going about their daily lives. They weren't out on some grand adventure, and yet ultimately, they disappeared for no good reason. And while his team was actively filming inside the Alaska Triangle, 2 separate disappearances occurred in real time. One person vanished from a cruise ship. Another disappeared from a crowded tourist area at the summit of a mountain, surrounded by other visitors. These weren't backcountry hikers caught in blizzard conditions. These were people in public spaces, in broad daylight, who simply stopped being there. The indigenous peoples of Alaska have their own explanation, and they've held it for far longer than any of us have been paying attention. The Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest coast speak of the Kushtaka, commonly known as the Kushtaka, which translates literally to land otter man. These are shape-shifting creatures capable of assuming human form, the form of an otter, and potentially other forms entirely. In some Tlingit stories, Kushtaka are helpful spirits who rescue lost travelers from freezing to death. In other traditions, there's something far more sinister: tricksters who lure victims to their deaths, entities that trap human souls and prevent them from reincarnating. The Kushtaka primarily target small children and the lost. Some scholars believe the legends served a practical purpose, keeping Tlingit children from wandering too close to the ocean alone. But the stories are remarkably consistent across multiple indigenous cultures in the region. The Tsimshian people call similar beings the Watsa. The Dena'ina call them Natina. The Yupik of western Alaska speak of the Urayuli. Different peoples, different languages, same warning. According to tradition, the Kushtaka emit a distinctive three-part whistle, low, high, low, and they can be warded off by copper, urine, dogs, and fire. That level of specific protective detail suggests these aren't casual campfire stories. These are survival protocols handed down through generations by people who genuinely believed something was out there. Now let's talk about what happened in the skies over the Alaska Triangle on November 17, 1986, at approximately 5:11 p.m. local Anchorage time. Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628, a Boeing 747-200F freighter, was traveling from Paris to Tokyo with a fuel stop in Anchorage. As the aircraft crossed into Alaskan airspace, Captain Kenji Terauchi reported seeing three unidentified objects. He described them as two small ships and the mothership. The objects paced the 747 for over 30 minutes. Here's where this case separates itself from typical UFO reports. Both the FAA and the United States Air Force confirmed that unidentified objects appeared on their radar systems during the encounter. The Washington Post ran the headline on January 2, 1987. UFO sighting confirmed by FAA Air Force radar. Japanese crew tells of encounter over Alaska. Some astronomers later suggested that Captain Terauchi may have mistaken the planets Jupiter and Mars for UFOs, but that explanation, while addressing the visual element, doesn't account for the radar returns. Investigators familiar with Project Blue Book, the Air Force's own historical UAP investigation program, noted similarities in how official agencies handled the aftermath, acknowledging the data while stopping short of formal conclusions. Every alternative explanation proposed to date covers some of the observed elements, but not all of them. That's precisely why this case remains open in the literature decades later. It stands as one of the most thoroughly documented airline UFO encounters in aviation history, and it happened squarely within the Alaska Triangle. Then there's the Dark Pyramid. What follows draws on unverified claims and disputed sources. Make of that what you will. In 1992, China conducted an underground nuclear test. Scientists monitoring the seismic shockwaves from that detonation recorded something unusual. A grainy, pyramid-shaped area of interference located approximately 700 feet beneath the surface of interior Alaska, not far from the shadow of Denali. Age unknown. Origin unknown. Function unknown. The story gained wider attention in 2012 when investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe reported on it. A source claimed that his father had worked between 1959 and 1961 on a powerful electrical system emanating from a very large underground pyramid of unknown origin. According to the theory, this pyramid contained enough energy to electrify all of North America. In 2020, a man named Nathan Campbell launched a solo expedition to the coordinates believed to house this underground structure. He wanted to find it himself. Nathan Campbell disappeared during his journey and has not been seen since. The Dark Pyramid claimed another person looking for it. Is any of this provable? No. Is it interesting that a man went looking for a supposed underground energy source in the Alaska Triangle and vanished just like the thousands before him? Absolutely. But perhaps the most remarkable development in the Alaska Triangle story is happening right now, and it has nothing to do with the paranormal. The glaciers are melting, and they're giving things back. In 1952, a C-124 Globemaster II, carrying 52 servicemen, crashed into Mount Gannett in Alaska's Chugach Mountains. The tail section was found near the summit, but the bodies and most of the wreckage were swallowed by the glacier and lost. For 60 years, those 52 men remained entombed in ice. Then, in 2012, a yellow life raft from the crash surfaced on Colony Glacier. The ice was moving, and it was releasing what it had taken. Operation Colony Glacier was launched. For 13 years, military recovery teams returned to the glacier year after year as more remains and wreckage emerged from the retreating ice. In March of 2026, Operation Colony Glacier achieved full mission success. All 52 service members were recovered and identified. 52 families waited over 70 years to bring their loved ones home. Climate change made it possible, but it's also creating a deadline. As glaciologist Louis Sass of the U.S. Geological Survey explains, the wreckage is coming out tens of years faster than it would have. Sections of ice containing remains are entering unstable splinter zones where searchers cannot safely venture, and whatever those ice fields hold will eventually end up on lake floors, lost forever in a different way. The search has become a race against time. Across Alaska and neighboring parts of Canada, teams are now hunting for half a dozen other large plane crashes believed to still be locked in glacial ice. A retired geophysicist named Michael Rosarita estimates the true number is much higher. "We're talking about dozens of aircraft," he says. Meanwhile, a newly formed group in Whitehorse has announced plans to resume searching for that 1950 Douglas C-54 Skymaster with its 44 missing personnel. 76 years later, people haven't stopped looking, and that might be the most important thread running through all of this. The Alaska Triangle doesn't just take, it refuses to explain. You can't point to one cause. You can't build one theory that covers all of it. The natural explanations are real, the terrain genuinely is that dangerous, but they don't account for every case. The paranormal explanations are fascinating but unprovable. The indigenous legends predate modern disappearances by centuries and describe something that maps uncomfortably well onto what people still report today. And underneath it all, literally, there may be things we haven't found yet. Things the ice hasn't released. Things that sit 700 feet below the surface, waiting. Over 20,000 people have disappeared in the Alaska Triangle since the 1970s. Some fell victim to the cold. Some were taken by bears. Some made navigational errors that the magnetic anomalies made worse. But a significant number of them vanished in ways that defy every conventional explanation we have. 6 people a day. In a place where there are more caribou than humans. In a region of genuinely dangerous geography, so vast that only a fraction of it has ever been systematically searched. A region that spans from the shadow of Denali to the shores of the Bering Sea, one of the most hostile and unforgiving landscapes on the planet. The glaciers are melting. The ice is thinning. And the Alaska Triangle is slowly, reluctantly, beginning to show us what it's been hiding. The question is whether we're ready for everything it has left to reveal.